You know, no, there's almost no chance of that. Not that I don't, but see, here's the thing. I believe that you pass stuff because it's good legislation, and then you give people like Mitch McConnell at least the opportunity to do the right thing. If he declines that opportunity, you broadcast it to the whole wide world so that people can remember in November. That's what we should do. You should never refrain from advocacy because you don't believe that some political body is going to deliver a fair result to you. You should always stand up and swing as hard as you can, organize as well as you can, and then organize on the basis of that at the next election.
Well, yeah, let's talk about the bill itself. I read the whole bill. I read it from front to back. It's not very long, so if anyone wants to go out and read HR 2214, you can do it in about 10, 15 minutes. But the language is fairly vague, and there are reporting requirements, but they're a little bit procedural. And there is included language that protects against discrimination on the basis of religion. But when the Supreme Court held in Trump versus Hawaii that the president's travel ban is not a ban based on religion, then I'm not sure where the bill goes and how it stops it. And of course, there's a lot of people who disagree with the court on the substance of that case. But in terms of this exact bill, I kind of feel like you wouldn't be going through all this effort just to promote a bill that wouldn't actually change the situation. You're an attorney general, so please just walk me through it. What did I miss in the bill, and how does it end the travel ban?
Well, if you want a detailed explanation of the bill, I think you should just contact Representative Judy Chu. She's the author of the bill. You should contact her. You should ask her to explain to you exactly what the bill says and what it does and why she believes that it's a bill that would be something that would solve the issues that you seem to be concerned about. But, I'll take a stab at it, even though it's not my bill. It would impose limitations on the president's authority to suspend or restrict aliens from entering the United States and terminate certain presidential actions implementing such restrictions. It also prohibits religious discrimination in various immigration-related decisions, such as whether to issue an immigrant or non-immigrant visa, with certain exceptions. The president may temporarily restrict the entry of any aliens or class of aliens after the Department of State determines that the restriction would address specific acts that threaten U.S. interests, such as the security or public safety. The bill also imposes limitations on such restrictions, such as requiring that the President, State Department, and Department of Homeland Security provide specific evidence of a need for the restriction and to narrowly tailor the restriction to meet a compelling governmental interest.
I'm sorry.
That's what the bill says, and I think that's a clear as explanation as I'm able to give you, sir.
No worries. When I had heard even the description you were giving, it sounds like in the bill, part of what you can do is, as the president, have the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security make up some kind of justification, whether or not it's a legitimate one or one that's patently fake, like the one that was struck down by the Supreme Court in the census case. If the administration is smart, it might be able to still get it passed even with that language. So that's just kind of what I was curious about. Doesn't the language itself still allow even patently made up justifications to allow things like the travel ban or the Muslim ban?
Well, I would say that the answer to that is no, because the administration is still subject to judicial review of its decision and the application of the law. And so you could still challenge it. It could make it up, but they're still going to have to show that they are following the law on a good faith basis. So I think that the No Ban Act is a good piece of legislation, and it could probably be refined. And I think the best thing to do would be an outright repeal or just get rid of the president's executive order altogether. But no, I just think it does put restrictions, limitations, and requires the administration to make an evidence-based showing that there is some public safety or national security thing. Now, can they make it up? Sure, they can make it up, but they're going to have to justify that and demonstrate from a fact-based point of view what their explanation is and why it meets the requirements for national security and public safety.
I just had a couple more questions on the topic. It's clear to anyone who reads your biography that you're a trailblazer for having been the first Muslim person elected to the United States Congress, and for other reasons. Can you tell us about how this issue and this piece of legislation are personal to you?
It's not really personal to me. I mean, it's true that I'm Muslim, and it's true that, but mostly it's not personal. I mean, if this was if he started out, we have a live example. He started out saying that the Mexicans were rapists and drug dealers, and maybe some are good people. I'm not Mexican, and I am absolutely appalled by what he said and the policies that have ensued based on the values that he stated. To be very candid, I'm not operating out of some personal need to vindicate my own identity. I think that what he's doing is abhorrent. It's ugly. I've talked to a lot of Muslims who've been treated a lot worse than I ever have had to. And my motivation is to protect them as people who deserve dignity and respect without regard to what their religion may be. But when people tell me that they've been escorted off airplanes for doing nothing other than praying a few minutes before they got on the flight, when people tell me they've been banned with no explanation from getting on a flight, when I hear Iranian Americans tell me that their relatives can't come visit them. In fact, I had a case when I was still in Congress that was after the no ban rule. Not the no ban rule. The Muslim ban was put into effect, and the early iterations of it were out there. I had a case where a friend of mine in California was telling me that her friend needed a marrow donor, and the only one who was a clear match was his sister, who was in Tehran. And he had leukemia, is my recollection, and if he did not, and if she did not get a visa, he could not get that marrow infusion, and he was going to die. And there was almost clear certainty that that was the case. Somehow, the law was, the executive order, when it was in its early phases, and we were able to advocate to get that young woman here. And this young man is out there. He's a doctor. He's practicing medicine today and is recovering from the leukemia that he suffered through. But, you hear stories like that, and that's all the motivation you need. And, I know that there wouldn't be anything wrong with me operating out of a sense of personal, motivation. But that's, to be candid with you, that's not really what's driving me. It's the injustice of it all that happens to people other than me, quite frankly. It just boils my blood to see people treated that way. And I'm not going to sit around and watch it. I'm going to fight it.
We're about to run out of time, but I wanted to highlight that you recently started your own podcast. It's called Affording Your Life with Keith Ellison.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You're a state attorney general. Why did you start a podcast?
Because I want people to know more about the dangers of consumer scams. I want people to know more about what the Attorney General's office does. One of the things that I ran into in the course of my service is a lot of people just don't know what the Attorney General's office does or what it can do for them. They don't know that when the scammers start scamming, that there's somebody they can call. A lot of people do know that the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which was started by Elizabeth Warren, has been gutted since President Trump got in office. And they may not know where they can go if they are treated unfairly in the marketplace. And we want them to know where they can go. So we've done some episodes on drug pricing. We've done episodes on wage theft. We've done episodes on other things. There's just a very rich body of material when it comes to talking about affording your life. I mean, if you can't pay your student loan, you can't afford your life. If you turn on the faucet and something bad comes out, not clean water, then you cannot afford your life. And if, your rent's too high because you got an abusive landlord, you can't afford your life. And if you can't afford your insulin because the drug prices are just too high and the pharmaceuticals are just gouging you, you cannot afford your life. So in America, my vision of America is that this is a country where hard work pays. But in this economy, for so many people, hard work does not pay. Hard work just allows you to go back to work. But people need to work to get ahead, not just to survive. So I look at it as an extension of our duty to share consumer information and to let people know where they can get help. And the plan is to do shows on everything from women's economic security issues of and concerning rental property. manufactured housing, also known as trailer parks, but they don't go anywhere. So that's probably not the right thing to call them. There's just no shortage of issues. We wage theft, labor issues, clopenings, where you have to close and open. What are your rights when it comes to this? Issues involving workers' compensation, issues involving a whole range of things that working people have to confront on a daily basis. And I'll just add, if you flip on the tube, you want to turn on the news, what is the economic news that you get? Well, they might tell you about the interest rates going up or down, or they might tell you about the unemployment rate going up or down, and they might say something about NASDAQ or the Dow Industrial Average. Beyond that, there's very little economic news that working people can use. Working people need to know, what is the story with reverse mortgage? Working people want to know, is it wise for me to go to a payday lender? Working people want to know, how come I can't get a bank account and I'm unbanked and I can't just keep going to these check cashing places? It's costing me a lot of money. Is there a better way for me to save money for my family? These are the key issues that working people want to know when it comes to news about the economy. It's just not available on ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, Gannett, Ritter, any of those guys. They don't talk about this stuff. So we're doing what we can so people can know a little bit more about how to negotiate this world and how to live in prosperity. So that's what we're doing.
Gotcha. Well, just putting it out there. If you ever want any podcasting advice, I'm here for you.
Well, what would your advice be? What do you think? What do you think about the name, Affording Your Life with Keith Ellison? What do you think?
I like the name. I think the first thing that came to mind when I listened to the episodes was the introductory music. Maybe like a hip hop track or something would be a good place to start.
The person who kind of runs the whole thing, I'm just the pretty face on front of it all. The person who runs it, Chanel McCoy, she is a hip hop artist. She knows the latest and the greatest tunes. So I'm going to share with her we need a snappier, poppier tune, and I'm sure she'd be the right one to pick out the right sounds for us.
Well, I think it's all great, and thank you so much for giving us your time today, Attorney General Keith Ellison. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate you, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day.
That's a wrap on another episode of UC3P. Big thanks to Minnesota State Attorney General Keith Ellison for speaking with me, as well as to the members of his staff. Personally, I really appreciate all the time they put into working with me on this, and so I see them and I appreciate them. Credits go to Haz Yano for engineering and myself, David Raban, for producing, interviewing, and editing. Our communications director is Thomas Krasnican. Our publisher is Haz Yano. Our intro music is Knockout 2 by Datubi. Our outro music is Yes Yes Y'all by Matt Large. Special thanks to the Harris School of Public Policy for helping us create our brand new studio. That includes Billy Morgan, Andrew Dawson, Jodi Daily, Eric Thomas, Jeff Zoline, Fay Booker, and so many others. If you want to hear more podcasts, check out our website, uc3p.org. And if you want to contact us, our email is the uc3p@gmail.com. So stay tuned. We'll be back next Friday with Democratic presidential candidate Marianne Williamson.
I say lard.
So at the time of this recording, we're a couple weeks into these revelations.
I quit.
About President Trump's calls with the president of Ukraine, where he asked for an investigation into former Vice President Joe Biden. You've already come out in favor of impeaching President Trump. Why is now the right time for impeachment?
Yes.
I'm asking you a question.
It's a yes or no answer.